Reverend Harber has been the lead pastor at Woodland Christian Church since 2020. A West Tennessee native, she holds a degree in nonprofit leadership from Murray State University and a Master of Divinity from Vanderbilt Divinity School. And Zach Worsham has been with Winterwood Development for over 10 years and currently serves as the organization's vice president. His primary responsibility is overseeing the company's real estate development and construction teams. And during his career, Zach has overseen over this is a crazy number, $390 million in affordable housing investments across 4 states in the region. So please welcome Zach and Reverend Harber to the stage. And for you all's edification, this is going to be a panel-style discussion moderated by me. It'll last for about 25 minutes, and then we'll open it up to audience Q&A, so go ahead and prep your questions now. All right, well, thank you all for being here. You might want to test your mics real quick before we get started.
Test 1, 2.
Check.
Yep.
Is that on?
Is it on?
Okay, yep.
There we go. All right, well, if y'all want to just go ahead and get started, we can start with you, Reverend Harber, and then you, Zach, if you just want to tell us a little bit about yourselves and how you got to this point in your life.
First, I want to say thank you, Ethan, for the invitation for us to share tonight. Zach and I have shared a number of times about our project, but not since we have a full house at Woodland Christian Church. The Oaks at Woodland have all of their units filled, 38, and we had our first worship service 2 days ago on Easter. So it's a real joy to share with you all tonight about our project. So how did we get here? As Ethan said, I arrived here in 2020, and that meant that we were worshiping on Zoom for my first year of ministry at Woodland. It was my first call as a solo senior pastor, and we, right out the gate, just had lots to learn. So as we were worshiping from home, I would be one of the only ones in and out of our building throughout the week, and our building began talking to us pretty loudly. It was talking through cracks and through leaks, and it gave our leadership an opportunity to share really candidly with me how this historic building had become an albatross around the church's neck. They were able to name that so many of their resources had become dedicated to the building for patchwork that just never seemed to end. And with membership declining over the past decades and underutilized ministry space that we had dreams about, however, we did not have the money to renovate or to even become ADA compliant in our historic building due to our limited budget. So we knew during the pandemic that we could not continue business as usual. We knew that something had to change. And so I suggested that we survey the bones inside and out, and we invited an architect group to come in and to survey our building from the inside out. And we had no idea what we would receive from that report. However, we learned that we would need over $1 million to get baseline repair. That's not to include renovations, that's not to become ADA compliant. And to have that data in black and white helped us know that we needed to explore all options. We had to consider, do we have to sell our historic property? Do we sell parcels of our land? Do we have to become a storefront church and give up our historic property that we love so much? So we began a season of discernment with our leaders and with our church, and we began to pray. And it was within 6 months that we connected with Winterwood, and it truly felt like a miracle when we came to the table and were open to sharing the resources that we had. Woodland had land to share, and Winterwood can fill in the gaps. We had no idea what it would be like to connect in such a way where our historic sanctuary could be restored, where our ministry spaces could be renovated, and where we could utilize every square foot of our building in a way that would bring new life to our ministry and to our community. The partnership required us to be courageous. As you can imagine, a century-old church being invited to such change, and what I would call rapid change in the middle of the pandemic and so much uncertainty. But we trusted that God was calling us toward a legacy of faith and service that was beyond our wildest dreams. And so Winterwood and their architects sat down with us in our basement, and they asked us what our ministry dreams were for the future. And they helped us determine what kind of ministry spaces we would need in our historic building and what we would need to begin thriving as a congregation. And this was a fun and a collaborative effort. And I can say now that we have moved back into our building just last month that we have everything that we need and more than we expected. A few fun features that we didn't know that we would be getting are automatic lights when you walk into a room, so we don't have to remember to turn the lights off. That was fun. And we also had more storage space than we anticipated. And y'all know, if you are part of the faith community, that we like to keep our things. And so no one really believed that we would have more than enough space to thrive integrating affordable housing and ministry. But I am so proud to celebrate and say that we found a way. It was a way that was creative and innovative and collaborative at each step of the journey. It was incredible to break ground and then just a little over a year later be moving back in to now be here with you all tonight to share this. Part of our mission as disciples of Christ, our denomination, is to be a movement for wholeness in our fragmented world. And we truly feel like at Woodland, this project allows us to live into that mission, offering affordable senior housing that isn't just about providing shelter, but it's about dignity and community and care. It's now a place where not only the church calls home, but 38 seniors of Lexington. And it's a place where we know each other's names and we are learning each other's story, which is what Woodland is all about. So this partnership has been an incredible adventure, and we call it a resurrection story. It has truly brought new life to our ministry and our community in ways that we could have not imagined on our own. And I'll stop there, Ethan. I could talk all night. I'm so excited about what is happening here.
Well, that was awesome, and thank you so much. We'll dig more into the details, but first, Zach, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and about Winterwood Development.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, and thank you all for having me, and thank you, Christy Jo, for those kind words, and she's done a great job laying the groundwork for what we've been able to accomplish at the Oaks at Woodland with Woodland Christian Church. I'm Zach Worsham. I'm with Winterwood Incorporated. Winterwood Development's a subsidiary of that larger organization. We've been based here in Lexington for about 47 years, and have through our entire history been a company focused on some form of affordable housing. We currently manage about 15,000 units of affordable housing in 9 different states across this region. And but Lexington is our home base. I'm born and raised here in Lexington, so we love the opportunity to get to work here when we can, and love the opportunity to see things that change neighborhoods that we're familiar with. And we're really honored to be part of this project. And I think that covers my, yeah.
You're from Lexington?
Yeah, from Lexington. Yeah.
Where did you go to high school?
Lexington Christian Academy.
Okay,
Yep.
all right. You got to ask that question whenever.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
All right. Well, let's jump into some of the questions. So my first question is for Reverend Harber. At your groundbreaking, or not at the groundbreaking, but at the ribbon cutting ceremony just a few weeks ago, and I think it's worth pointing out that this project just opened just about a week ago now, right? Mm-hmm. You mentioned that this was, and you said it just a minute ago too. This represented a renewal in your ministry. And so I'm wondering if you can just kind of tell us a little bit about what you mean by this and why and how affordable community-oriented housing could be a calling for other faith communities in Lexington.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's helpful to note here, too, that this integrative model that we found within Woodland historic building, we really do feel like it is unique. So our building is 3 stories, and on each story we have ministry space and apartment side by side. So next to my office, there is an apartment. Right outside of our sanctuary doors, there is an apartment. Outside of our balcony, there's an apartment. And the resident shared with me last week that she's a lifelong disciple of Christ, grew up at our Kentucky church camp, and just thinking about that and renewing literally every square foot of our building is just beyond what we could have imagined to do in this particular way. Woodland has taken great pride for the many ways that our building has been able to serve our community since its inception. Groups use our building for neighborhood meetings, Alcoholic Anonymous groups. We serve as a safety shelter for summer camps at Woodland Park. We provide meeting spaces for mental health therapists, yoga classes, fitness classes, and more. However, when our building started talking really loud, it wasn't just leaks and cracks, it was the air conditioner not working, heat not working, et cetera. So we finally could not maintain those systems over and over again. And it was only through this partnership and this renewal that we could again become a community service hub for Lexington. But even when membership dwindled over the past decades, Woodland was able to maintain our commitment to serving our community in the ways that we could, even if we had to bring out our paper fans and et cetera. But the pandemic allowed us the time and space to consider how much of our space that we truly needed. And also be honest about the compounded deferred maintenance that was just beyond our repair. So Zach, along with his brother Fred, had this bold and brilliant and beautiful vision that our partnership together could restore our building, but also help our resources not be funneled into just patchwork of a building, but now they can be redirected to outreach and ministry and staffing and things that every faith community dreams of its resources going to. And I mean, if that's not renewal, I don't know what is. I think that in this particular season, especially after the pandemic, this is a time where churches are beginning to acknowledge the underutilization of their space and the suffering of the financial strain of maintaining historic buildings. I talk to my colleagues all the time who are confronted with these harsh realities that we were. And we believe that our partnership with Winterwood is not only innovative, but it's an invitation for faith communities to take courageous risks and decide to put their resources together, because we are always stronger when we share with our neighbors. We believe this model could not only be used here in Lexington, but across the Commonwealth and truly across the United States. But if we are people of faith, we believe that there is more than enough for all of us, not only to survive, but to thrive. But the key to that is to partnering together. And we also know that the need of affordable housing and especially with seniors. So when Woodland was invited to consider this opportunity to integrate affordable housing with our ministry, it felt like a no-brainer. It felt like a win-win, and I can say tonight that it truly is that on all sides. We know that seniors also suffer with loneliness and isolation, so to integrate them into a robust community, what better way to renew a community and a church?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that you say serving the neighbors. I live just down the street from Woodland Christian Church, and I was telling my building, the folks who live in my building, you should come and learn about our new neighbors. It's great to have 38 new neighbors in the neighborhood. It's a really special thing.
Truly. And because of the generosity of Winterwood and all of our community partners, our church was able to dream even bigger than we ever imagined. When I was interviewing at Woodland, I walked into the historic sanctuary, and it reminded me a lot of the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville, Tennessee. It's a beautiful music venue that's called the Mother Church. And I started dreaming of what our sanctuary could be, not only a place for vibrant worship on Sunday mornings, but also a performing arts venue, as music is taking off here in Lexington too. And so because of the generosity of our partnership, our church decided to do our own capital campaign, and we were able to raise money to bring our technology and audiovisual up to date in our sanctuary, and we hope to also be a performing arts space as well. So that could only happen through our project.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. I'm excited to see that. Mm-hmm. My next question is for you, Zach. And we heard Hal just say this. Obviously, building affordable housing is not as easy as building traditional market rate or luxury housing. It requires a little extra push from every direction. And so I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit specifically about the financing and what challenges you faced, but also what pathways did you use to finance this development? Where did you find some capital expense? And then how can other religious institutions replicate this success?
Yeah, sure. So I pulled up out here. I was running late, and I parked at a meter on the street and realized I forgot my wallet. And I am out here on limestone, digging through the glove compartment in the center console of my car, just trying to find enough spare change to get the $3 I needed. That's a little bit what this is like, right? We are rummaging through different options. Complex is fair. Niche is probably more accurate, right? If you really get into the nuts and bolts of affordable housing finance, I don't know that it's inherently more complex than market rate real estate development. You're really all working with the same concept that capital costs money. There's a rate of return that needs to be returned to investors and lenders, and for lenders it's through interest rates, and investors it's some sort of return. But we just have a couple of different vehicles that we're able to use, and then there's some philanthropic feel to providing affordable housing, and so there's some public money that's available. There's some other things that you can do. This project specifically, there were 9 different financing sources that we had to cobble together to make this project work. 10. One of the things in the partnership with Woodland is that we didn't have to pay market value for their land, right? We were able to offer them something in the way of renovating their sanctuary and renovating their ministry space, but we didn't have to go in and pay a market value. And so that was a big plus for this capital stack. But even still, we had to cobble together a lot of different things. The primary driver for affordable housing finance at any scale is something called the low-income housing tax credit. I won't bore you with the details of that particular program, but what it is the federal government will give you tax incentives if you build communities that you dedicate to rent at affordable rates. Now, there's probably some debate about what affordable is. What we're talking about is for people making 60% of the area median income, right? And so we take those tax incentives, they become millions of dollars in tax incentives. It's a competitive process because they're limited. We take those tax incentives and we sell them to banks, insurance companies. In this case, the 2 main buyers of these tax incentives were Traditional Bank here locally and then Aetna, CVS. So these are large companies with huge tax liabilities that need these things, but they still need some return. So you get these incentives and they're going to discount what they'll pay for them. Because Woodland is a historic building, there's other tax programs that the National Park Service offers for preservation of historic structures called the Federal Historic Preservation Tax Credit. There's also a state level tax credit. And then beyond that, we do some traditional financing, construction lending, and permanent loans that will be serviced by the rents collected. And then really what drove this project, I say this, it's important because this is a unique project that was very expensive. I know that this group is interested in urban infill and ways to replicate that throughout our city. It's still very hard, and this project would not have happened if not for City of Lexington's allocation of American Rescue Plans Act dollars into their affordable housing fund. We use a tremendous amount of those dollars to finance this project through a couple of really creative financing tools. Happy to get into the details of that. Maybe someone would want to ask about that afterwards. It's a little bit nuanced, but there was kind of 3 different ways that the city used their affordable housing funds to finance this project through a couple of repayable loans, a couple of non-repayable loans, one loan that's repayable in a very short period of time that allowed us to generate more capital from the sale of these tax incentives, and then there were some federal grants that we received. So it's a lot like what I was doing just a few minutes ago, just trying to cobble together enough quarters to hit the mark, and then once you hit it, you can go. So
That's perfect. That actually feeds in right into the next question as well for you. If I'm not mistaken, y'all had to go through a zone change process to get this built, and so I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that, but then also some of the other legal and mechanical roadblocks you faced, and can you tell us a little bit about where, you already have a little bit, but where the City of Lexington and the Commonwealth of Kentucky kind of stepped in and gave you all a hand?
Yeah, we did have to go through a zone change. I'll say in this particular case, it really wasn't that difficult, right? There was a little bit of neighborhood opposition, but mostly practical concerns that we could address around parking and some other things. So we didn't have a huge fight with the neighbors on this project, which is not always the case when you're trying to bring increased density into an area, and that provides some additional complication. Hal and some of the staff at planning were very supportive of the project. I think we met the goals of the comp plan well, and that was, made this process a little bit smoother. So if you're following the comp plan and you bring a project that meets those particular goals and objectives, that process can go pretty smooth. Now, an added layer of complexity is this is in an H1 overlay. We had to go through the Board of Architectural Review for approval of our design, which is a layer of approval that is more intensive or more subjective than a building permit review, which is also something you go through on any project. And I think it's fair to say, and this may not be the case now, but at the time, the Board of Architectural Review had not seen something of this scale in some time. A lot of what they're dealing with are additions and renovations to the single-family homes or existing businesses. To see a structure that's 35,000 square foot, it's 60,000 square foot or so, constructed in an H1 overlay, took some work. We had a really good design team. They worked through that. The Board of Architectural Review was understanding, and the staff at LFUCG understood what we were trying to do, and it worked out. But it was complex and added some time, added some nuance. One of the things that makes affordable housing particularly difficult is we run on application cycles. This capital, these tax incentives that we use are not available at any moment when you're ready to go take them. You have to go in certain windows each year. And so a lot of times you have to line your zoning process up with that. That can be challenging. It worked out pretty well in this instance, but it took a long time. We've been working on this thing for 4 or 5 years, right? And maybe longer than that. And so these things don't happen as quickly as we probably need them to. But the zone change, the entitlement process here was, I'll say, relatively easy. Fair enough. And I think we came in right at the same time, talking about where LFUCG helped. I think we were right before, Hal can correct me, the zone change on parking. So we did have to come in for a parking variance because we really needed to utilize absolutely every inch of available space on this property to make this thing financially viable, right? So we did not have the ability. There's some existing parking there already. We did not have the ability to add more parking, and so planning worked with us on a variance there that made a huge difference. I think that variance would now probably be by right, but yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, and I think the bottom line is y'all got it over the finish line.
Sure, yeah.
Woohoo!
And now you're there, yeah.
That's right.
Awesome.
Yay.
Well, I've just got one more question for y'all, and this one is for both of you before we get into some audience questions. But actually, I have a question for the audience to lead into it. Are y'all familiar, and just shake your heads or raise your hands, with the term YIMBY? Y-I-M-B-Y? Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of heads nodding. Okay. There's a new term that's kind of making waves across the country, YIGBY. It's a little less rolling off the tongue, but it stands for Yes in God's Backyard. And it's the idea that the churches should embrace building affordable housing on their land to fill a need in their community, especially like the one that Hal referenced in Lexington that we have for affordable housing. So kind of with that in mind, and we can start with you, Reverend Harber, and then you, Zach. What's something that you would like for folks here to take away from this? What is the one lesson that you would like people to take away from the success that y'all have had with the Oaks at Woodland?
Mm-hmm. Given our history and what we knew about our building, and especially when we received that architect report, we had every reason to think that we were in a state of an emergency. And instead, our leaders saw it as an invitation to emerge into something new, which is exactly what this project has brought to life. And so I would just encourage anyone who thinks that there's not enough resources or there are too many roadblocks, that when you find a creative partner who's willing to work with you, who's willing to hear your dreams, and you're willing to hear theirs, it's all possible. I think too often we get stuck in a scarcity mindset when we really know that there is more than enough for all of us to thrive, but the key is together. And so that would be my takeaway here.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll kind of start with, I think it's a great question. And to the point of the Yes in God's Backyard movement, which is a movement of policy shifting for faith communities to have regulatory roadblocks reduced to build affordable housing, right? A couple of, I think, pertinent statistics. In 2020, a Gallup poll said that for the first time in American history, less than half of Americans are going to church regularly. Now, I'm not qualified to speak on why that's probably a bad thing, but maybe Christy Jo can talk about that in another context. But that's the truth. That's the reality. Within 10 years from now, the U.S. Census estimates it'll be the first time in American history that there are more people over 65 in the United States than there are under the age of 18. And right now, in the United States, over 12 million individuals over the age of 65 are what we consider rent cost burdened, meaning they're paying more than 30% of their income in housing cost, not rent cost, housing cost burdened. That's a huge problem. There's a couple of huge changes in our world happening there, and probably the affordability challenge is not as drastic a change. It's probably been going on a little bit longer than some of those other things. But we've got to look at the circumstances we have and find ways to meet those moments. I think one of the things that we've talked about in our organization lately is kind of a review of projects that happened pre-2020, 2017, 2018, and have just been really, frankly, annoyed at how cheap it was to build just like 7 or 8 years ago. But like these other statistics, we have to look at the circumstances, whether they're good or bad. They are the circumstances that we live with. They are the realities. And we've got to find ways to meet those moments. And I think you see a couple of statistics there where a couple of realities converge into probably an opportunity for solutions. You've got churches with declining population, meaning they don't need as much space as they once did. You've got individuals who are cost burdened, who need affordable places to live, who are over 65, and that number is growing every day because the number of people over 65 is growing drastically every day. And so I think we've got to find a way to merge those two things. That's what I think we've done here at Woodland. I think there's more opportunity for the faith community to join in that effort. It's a really simple equation. Although we've talked about how complicated the process was, it is replicable. Churches have too much space in some cases. We need space to build housing. Those two things seem to go together pretty easily.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, thank you so much. We're going to open it up to some audience questions. So if anybody has a question, feel free to raise your hand, and just don't forget to speak loudly so that we can hear you. We're kind of far back.
Yeah, so we're managing the operations of the units, and there's a couple things with that. One, that's our expertise, and we want, part of this mission and part of this vision for faith communities is we can take over the burden of facilities, and so that they can continue to focus on serving the community the way that they know best, right? The other thing is using these federal programs is complex from an ongoing compliance standpoint. So you really have to have an expertise in staying in compliance with these particular programs where there's severe financial penalties and. Yeah, so that's a very good question, and one that I think is important for other faith communities interested in this kind of opportunity. We ended up executing a long-term land lease, so the church still owns the property. The land lease gives us the ability to operate on it. It's 75 or 99. I can't. It's a 99-year land lease, so it's extremely long. But that is a thing that I think we found important for Woodland, was that they continued to own the property that they had stewarded for so long, and we needed some legal avenue then to operate on it and to do some other things that generated these tax incentives. So the church does own the property, but there's actually a couple of leases that go back and forth. So we are an apartment provider, and that is the water's edge for us. Okay, so it's a totally independent living. We do not counsel people on when they need to move on. We do have resources that our site staff has that they can connect people with other organizations that do so. But yes, we'll keep a wait list. It is full. So as of a week or so ago, we have filled all of the 38 units on the property, and there is a wait list that is starting. So still feel free to call. People's circumstances change, and a unit could come open. I think one of the, and we don't have any data to back this up, right? But our hunch is that the integration of an existing church community and this type of housing is going to provide some benefit that might be intangible. But I'll let Christy Jo speak about that a little bit. But while we don't provide any sort of counseling or service to talk about when it's time to move on to other living opportunities, we do think that there's going to be some benefit to the intense integration physically with a church community.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. And we are excited to offer programs and workshops, not only for our senior residents, but for seniors of Lexington. So if you are interested in partnering with us in any way with social services, physical therapy, music, et cetera, now that we are back on our property, we're looking forward to offering these types of services, even connecting seniors when they know that it's time for assisted living, being kind of a community hub where we are helping our neighbors connect with the next right thing.
And I'm not sure I have a good answer for you. It's a little bit complicated. We have a couple of different projects we've done across the state of Kentucky with nonprofit providers where we have executed these sorts of leases where the nonprofit owns the underlying land. And in every case, we have continued to take the benefit of property tax exemption that the nonprofit has. I don't know that we have that by right. In some other states, that is the case. There are programs where those things there's actually some other states where if you were building affordable housing, property tax reductions or exemptions are by right. Kentucky, that is not the case, so it's at the discretion of the PVA. Or the tax assessor, generally. They're one bedroom, and we are, again, regulated by this program, the Low Income Housing Tax Credit Program, and the Department of Housing and Urban Development produces annually income limits where you have to make less than a certain amount of money to qualify to live in units that are covered by this program, and then rent limits that are commensurate with those income limits. So the rent at the Oaks at Woodland is, depending on a couple of different program types, between $900 and a little over $1,000 a month. And we don't actually, that rent does not change in this case based on your individual income. There are some programs that do that. This is not one of those. The rent does not go up commensurate with any individual's change in circumstance. We, at the end of every lease term or every year, may reevaluate our rents based on what the low-income housing tax credit program allows, and if we're able to take an increase, we may. But it's not situational like that. We don't do it as Social Security increases come or COLA increases come to different sources of income. Sure, yeah, and there's a lot of communities across the United States that do that. One of the things that we work in a couple of different markets around this part of the country. We work in Charlotte, North Carolina a little bit, and they've done a lot of work with their city-owned land, offering it at low cost or no cost to developers with plans to do things like this. And so, yeah, that's a practice that happens fairly often in other communities. It's not something we've seen here yet. But I think there would be appetite for that. And there's a couple of people around that do the kind of work that Winterwood does, and I think amongst any of those folks, there'd be appetite to respond to opportunities like that. Almost every project we do is through this low-income housing tax credit program, and so they are all low income. We've done work in Indiana, West Virginia, North Carolina, and Kentucky, but we've probably worked in about 40 or 50 counties in Kentucky. We actually have operations in about 90 counties across the state of Kentucky, so what I'll tell you is that there is no set rent in this community. What it is this program uses census data to look at area income per county. So Fayette County has an income qualification metric and a rent limit. Madison County has a different one. Scott County has a different one. Pike County has a different one even still, right? And so it's situational. So it's, Charlotte, North Carolina, the rents are higher than that because the average income in that community is higher, and frankly, the market rents are much higher. I mean, a couple $100 more than it is here, probably. I mean, it's significantly more in Charlotte. But then you look at a county like Mason County. We're building a project in Mason County right now, and it's several $100s cheaper than it is here. But the area median income is lower.